In 2002, the new chief accountant was appointed to the European Commission. The job was to look after the accounts which covered billions of pounds in spending. But when it came to signing the 2001 accounts, there was a problem. The opening figure didn't match the closing figure. In simple terms, 130 million euros were missing. The accountant naturally refused to sign. The EU put the chief accountant under extraordinary pressure to sign off the accounts, but she refused. She wouldn't put her signature to something which she suspected was rife with fraud. Eventually, they suspended her and sacked her. But now, Marta Andreasen is back as a democratically elected member of the European Parliament. She's been appointed board member of the EFD Group, where she's responsible for monitoring the EU budget in the Budget and Budgetary Control Committees. Her mission remains the same, to find out how taxpayers' money is being spent or, in many cases, wasted. In 2001, she was working for the European Commission. Now, she's representing the interests of British taxpayers.
The experience I had at the European Commission was incredible. It was horrible, but I'm glad that I have had the opportunity to come back, work here in favor of European taxpayers.
The EU's accounts are mind-bogglingly difficult to understand, but with the help of Marta, we've managed to go through them, and for the first time, over the next few minutes, we'll try to explain in terms that all of us can understand some of the key issues and what they mean for you. Do you know how much of your yearly income goes to the EU? Well, over the last 5 years, for which figures are available, that's 2006 to 2010, Britain spent over £46 billion on membership of the European Union, and the costs are only increasing. If you break that down, it means that every household has paid over £350 per year on average, and that amount is even after the UK rebate, which was negotiated in the 1980s, has been taken off. So if Britain came out of the EU, you'd be able to buy 350 loaves of bread, go out to dine in restaurants 10 times per year, perhaps pay for half of your family holiday. You'd have no problem buying clothes or school uniforms for your children, or perhaps even pay the deposit on a new car every year. But if the money we pay to the EU is being used for our benefit, then you could argue it's a worthwhile investment for all of us. But is it?
You wouldn't believe how taxpayers' money is being wasted here. It's something that people have no idea whatsoever.
According to Marta, the single biggest thing you and I pay for in the money we give to the EU is the common agricultural policy. Typically 45% of the entire EU budget is spent on this. Back in 2010, that was over 55 billion euros. The idea was that it would help farmers by guaranteeing a reasonable living and consumers by ensuring affordable food supplies. If it means cheaper prices in the shops and good quality food, that sounds like a good idea, right? But in reality, it hasn't worked. Over the past 3 years, the price of staple foods such as bread and eggs has risen by 18%. But it gets worse. You'd think that common agricultural policy funds go to farmers and agriculture, right? Well,
while researching where the money was going, I found out that 60,000 euros had gone to an accordion club in Sweden. And a billiard club in Denmark was paid 30,000 euros for beer. Are they paying people to get drunk?
But that's not all. Further revelations include over 162,000 euros going to an ice skating club in the Netherlands, over 300,000 euros going to an amateur football club in the Netherlands, and the hugely profitable Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, getting almost 100,000 euros. Clearly, the common agricultural policy is not all about agriculture. Now, some people have accused the EU of coming up with ideas which could have come from outer space. In fact, here's an idea which is literally from outer space: the Galileo Global Positioning Satellite Project. It was initially planned as a sat-nav system that would rival America's system, but GPS doesn't come cheap. Originally starting life as a £7 billion project, the costs have rocketed to £22 billion. Wouldn't you have scrapped it?
Imagine that you go to buy a car, they tell you the price of the car is £7,000, and you put the order, and when you go to pick it up, they tell you that the price is really £22,000. What would you do? You would cancel the order, wouldn't you?
It's the European Commission, together with the European Space Agency, which is responsible for the Galileo project. It's the European Commission that controls the budget, the expenditure, and whether the project should continue. Did they do that? No. So they failed in all respects.
In the UK, when we go over budget, we just cancel the project. This is what we did with the IT system for the NHS.
You might think there's nothing you can do about all this, but we'll tell you what you can do in a moment. It's easy to get an impression then that the EU is all about waste, but that's because there are so many examples of it. Here's another one for you, the Common Fisheries Policy, or CFP. On their website, the European Commission boasts of how the CFP brings together a range of measures designed to achieve a thriving and sustainable European fishing industry. So what's that in English? In short, it's the Common Agricultural Policy, but for fish, and works about as well.
The Common Fisheries Policy was introduced to ensure that Europe had a thriving fisheries industry. But the reality is that they impose quotas to fishermen, and therefore neither the fishermen nor the fish come out well out of this. The fishermen cannot land all the quantity they have fished, they cannot sell it, and all this dead fish goes back to the sea. This is not sensible.
So it not only leaves many fish dead unnecessarily, but also limits the amount fishermen can make. Worse still, the EU is giving millions of pounds of subsidies to fishermen who break the law by using nets which catch fish which should have been left in the sea.
20% of the vessels in France and Spain have received EU funding after they have broken the law. Why should we be funding illegal fishing? This is wasting taxpayers' money, and it's even promoting illegal fishing because they know they're going to receive funding from the EU, whatever they do.
So does the Common Fisheries Policy do anything to help fishermen and the stocks of the ocean's fish? This is what the European Commission say about their own policy. Our current system is not working in favour of sustainability. The system does not work for the EU market. Consumers worry about waste levels.
Even the European Commission believes that the Common Fisheries Policy is not successful, and they are wanting to reform it. But I think whatever the reforms they bring up will not be enough. And I think we should just drop this Common Fisheries Policy, and UK should take control of its own waters.
Of course, the policies decided in Brussels are having an impact on the very streets where we live. Take the market town of Alton in Hampshire, for example. Quiet, traditional, but with a thriving community. It's also home to the Allen Gallery and the Curtis Museum, and yet both have been hit by recent cutbacks.
These amenities are victims of the government cuts. Hampshire will have £1 million cut. And while they are squandering millions in Brussels, here in the UK, the British children are not able to learn history, their own history, in their own museums. It is the community that's taking care of these amenities right now.
But while the government wields the axe on museums which teach children about British history, the EU is wasting money on a facility that our kids will rarely be able to visit.
Well, here in Brussels, it's different. You know, they are trying to set up this European History House. I don't know for what purpose, but it's going to cost the British people £10 million for a start to refurbish it, and then it's going to cost £1 million per year. And they even want to have this crystal pyramid on the roof. One wonders why. No structure here. We don't need one. We don't need one in Brussels either. In fact, we don't even need a European History House.
So, we know that the EU's wasting money, and that's damaging Britain, our farmers, fishermen and heritage. But is some of our money just vanishing into thin air? Just outside Basingstoke in the Hampshire countryside is Bramshill Police College. One of the organisations based here is the European Police College and has an annual budget of about €8 million. Remember, Marta's role within the EFD Group is to oversee how taxpayers' money is being spent.
Well, in 2009, we had to approve the accounts of the European Police College. And we found that the staff and the management had incurred in serious irregularities. Some of the staff would use college money to buy fuel for private purposes. Others would buy furniture that they said was for the college, but you couldn't see the furniture around the college. And I think these are serious irregularities that indicate there is a problem with the financial management in that European Police College. So I was of the opinion that we couldn't give this charge to the accounts for that year, even if the present management says they have improved all the situation. I want to say that I'm probably the only MEP who went and visited the European Police College in the UK. And although I saw that these people are making great efforts to make changes, today we are giving this charge to the 2009 accounts, which were the accounts under the management of the people who committed the irregularities. Therefore, I will vote against this charge because we are discharging the old accounts. And I think we would do little favor to the present management if we would approve the accounts that were prepared and managed by the old management. Thank you.
The EU is trying to take over more of our lives, and that is costing money. You'd have thought with centuries of experience that the UK would be ideally placed to understand world affairs. In diplomacy, contacts, relationships and experience count. Yet the EU wants to create its own foreign service, and the body that wants to do it has none of those features. In fact, many people around the world see the EU as close to a joke, which isn't helpful when you want to be taken seriously. The body which has been set up is called the European External Action Service, but it's so new and so inexperienced that it's like sending a schoolchild to sort out the Middle East question. It was created after the Lisbon Treaty came into force, essentially as the EU's Foreign Office.
Well, in fact, it's more sinister than that, because this EEAS is trying to replace all embassies that the member states have around the world. And it's going to cost almost €500 million per year. Half of the people who will be working here will earn more than David Cameron. So it's unbelievable. In addition, it's a loss of sovereignty because they are going to decide what the foreign policy is going to be for all the member states, including the UK, who plays a very important role in foreign policy for the whole of Europe.
So the Union flag would disappear off embassies, while the EU flag would replace it. But how necessary is it? Britain had embassies around the world long before the EU even existed. And as some people are saying, the logo of the EEAS shows the stars detached from the world. Is the EEAS, in fact, detached from reality?
I don't see the prime ministers of the UK, Germany and France and other member states allowing somebody here, this bureaucracy, to make decisions on their foreign policy.
Let's take another look at those figures Marta just mentioned. Whoever's Britain's Prime Minister is paid a salary of £142,000. The average salary for an ambassador to the UK is £81,000. But in contrast, a top official for the EEAS is paid anywhere between £138,000 and an astonishing £192,000. The thing is, there's not just one senior official at the EEAS, there'll be over 150 of them in the top jobs. Most of them will earn more than the UK Prime Minister, meaning for their salaries alone, European taxpayers face an annual bill of over £22 million. If that's not bad enough, just for renting their offices, €10 million. So the total bill to fully fund the EEAS will cost British and European taxpayers €464,104,592 just to get the organisation up to speed.
It is simply not worth it. We are duplicating costs and we don't need to do this. And you and I can do something to change this situation.
When we pay tax, it goes to the Treasury, which then sends it out to different government departments, and over £46 billion over the past few years to the EU, of course. But once it arrives in Brussels, where does our tax go exactly?
The fact is that we know where the money is coming from for the EU budget, but we don't know where this money is going to. We don't have any explanation of where our taxes are being spent. And you and I are taxpayers putting this money into this budget. So we should have an explanation.
Here's one of the areas Marta's talking about. Between 2007 and 2009, over 15 million euros went to confidential recipients. In one case, 7.7 million euros went to a confidential recipient in Switzerland for European Neighbourhood and Partnership Financial Cooperation with Mediterranean countries. And in another case, 4 million euros went to a confidential recipient in France for the same reason as Switzerland.
This issue about the confidential recipients has a lot to do with the lack of transparency with which the European Union manages our budgets. I believe that they give money to the people who support the European Union project. This is the belief I had when I was a chief accountant in the European Commission. This is the belief I have today.
Did you know that Britain contributes about 13% of the EU's foreign aid budget, as it does to all the EU budgets? So we've looked at quite a few examples of how the EU operates and how much it costs you and me. But things could be about to get a lot worse, because the EU wants a lot more money from us all to pay for all its expensive schemes. We pay the British government plenty of money in income tax, car tax, value-added tax, fuel excise duty, just to name a few. It would be nice to pay less tax, wouldn't it? Well, the opposite may be about to happen. For more than a year, the European Commission has been trying to introduce a direct EU tax.
Now the European Union is trying to find a way to finance itself. They don't want to be asking for money from the prime ministers of the different member states because they know they will get a no, especially in times of crisis. So they want to take money directly out of taxpayers' pockets. And they have designed this new idea of a European Union tax.
But don't expect EU tax to appear on your payslip. This tax will be implemented on financial services and could be a threat to British business. But that doesn't mean it won't affect you. If British businesses have to pay more tax, guess who's going to have to pay higher prices? You and I. If British businesses leave Britain because of these higher taxes, people working for them will lose their jobs. And if companies are no longer paying corporation tax to Britain, who's left to pay for building new hospitals, repairing roads and putting police on the streets? You and I.
They are talking about either a financial transaction tax or a carbon emission tax. If it were a financial transaction tax, this would hurt the City of London in a way that you couldn't imagine, because obviously people will look to do business in other countries, in other places in the world where they don't have to pay this tax. So I think this would be ludicrous for the UK.
So, in this film, we've seen that farmers and shoppers are being failed by the Common Agricultural Policy. We see that we've been failed by the European Commission's inability to control costs. Fishermen and fish have been failed by the Common Fisheries Policy. Money's been wasted on a House of European History, and there's been unnecessary spending on organisations like the European Police College. The EU plans to override our foreign policy and foreign aid control while wasting millions on projects that we can't even find out about. And now they want more of our money by taxing us directly.
I go into the meetings of the Budget Committee every day, and the proposals that are being brought are even difficult to understand for me, and I am supposed to be an expert. And the demands that the different political parties have for the budget are huge. And the only limit today to this budget is the ongoing crisis that we have around Europe and around the world. But they ask for projects that have no sense and that are very difficult for people to understand.
So what can you and I do about it?
If you are concerned by what you have seen in this DVD and think that we cannot allow this to continue, please pass on this DVD to your friends and colleagues and contact us. We are planning a number of campaigns where you can make the difference.
Marta has begun an e-petition to cut the UK's contribution to the EU budget. Do your bit and get involved today.